Hello everybody, welcome to our reading today of our book. So last time I left off in the middle of a very heavy chapter where Junior just found out he lost his sister and he was driving with his dad. So we're picking up where we left off. I couldn't figure out why I was laughing, but I kept laughing as my dad drove out of Reardon and headed through the storm back to the reservation. And then finally, as we crossed the reservation border, I stopped laughing. How did she die? I asked. There was a big party at her house, her trailer in Montana, he said. Yep, my sister and her husband lived in some old silver trailer that was more like a TV dinner tray than a home. They had a big party, my father said. Of course they had a big party, of course. They were drunk. They're Indians. They had a big party, my father said, and your sister and her husband passed out in the back bedroom, and somebody tried to cook some soup on a hot plate, and they forgot about it and left. And a curtain drifted in on the wind and caught the hot plate, and the trailer burned down quick. I swear to you that I could hear my sister screaming. The police say your sister never even woke up, my father said. She was way too drunk. My dad was trying to comfort me, but it's not too comforting to learn that your sister was too freaking drunk to feel any pain when she burned to death. And for some reason, that thought made me laugh even harder. I was laughing so hard that I threw up a little bit in my mouth. I spit out a little piece of cantaloupe, which was weird because I don't like cantaloupe. I've hated cantaloupe since I was a little kid. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten the evil fruit. And then I remembered that my sister had always loved cantaloupe. Ain't that weird? I was so freaky that I laughed even harder than I'd already been laughing. I started pounding the dashboard and stomping on the floor. I was going absolutely insane with laughter. My dad didn't say a word. He just stared straight ahead and drove home. I laughed the whole way. Well, I laughed until we were both about halfway home, and then I fell asleep. Snap, just like that. Things had gotten so intense, so painful, that my body just checked out. Yep, my mind and soul and heart had a quick meeting and voted to shut down for a few repairs. And guess what? I dreamed about cantaloupe. Well, I dreamed about a school picnic I went to way back when I was 7 years old. There were hot dogs and hamburgers and soda pop and potato chips and watermelon and cantaloupe. I ate like 7 pieces of cantaloupe. My hands and face were way sticky and sweet. I'd eaten so much cantaloupe that I'd turned into a cantaloupe. Well, I finished my lunch and I ran around the playground, laughing and screaming, when I felt this tickle on my cheek. I reached up to scratch my face and squished the wasp that had been sucking sugar off my cheek. Have you ever been stung in the face? Well, I have, and that's why I hate cantaloupe. So I woke up from this dream, this nightmare, just as my dad drove the car up to our house. We're here, he said. My sister is dead, I said. Yes. I was hoping I was dreaming that, I said. Me too. I dreamed about that time I got stung by the wasp, I said. I remember that, Dad said. We had to take you to the hospital. I thought I was going to die. We were scared too. My dad started to cry. Not big tears, just little ones. He breathed deep and tried to stop them. I guess he wanted to be strong in front of his son, but it didn't work. He kept crying. I didn't cry. I reached out, wiped the tears off my dad's face, and tasted them. Salty. I love you, he said. Wow. He hardly ever said that to me. I love you too, I said. I never said that to him. We walked into the house. My mom was curled into a ball on the couch. There were like 25 or 30 cousins there eating all our food. Somebody dies and people eat your food. Funny how that works. Mom, I said. Oh, Junior, she said, and pulled me onto the couch with her. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Don't leave me, she said. Don't ever leave me. She was freaking out, but who could blame her? She just lost her mother and her daughter in just a few months. Who ever recovers from a thing like that? Who ever gets better? I knew that my mother was now broken and that she'd always be broken. Don't you ever drink, my mother said to me. She slapped me. Once, twice, 3 times. She slapped me hard. Promise me you'll never drink. Okay, I promise, I said. I couldn't believe it. My sister killed herself with booze and I was the one getting slapped. Where was Leo Tolstoy when I needed him? I kept wishing he'd show up so my mother could slap him instead. Well, my mother quit slapping me, thank God, but she held on to me for hours, held on to me like I was a baby. And she kept crying, so many tears. My clothes and hair were soaked with her tears. It was like my mother had given me a grief shower, you know? Like she'd baptized me with her pain. Of course, it was way too weird to watch, so all of my cousins left. My dad went in his bedroom. It was just my mother and me, just her tears and me. But I didn't cry. I just hugged my mother back and wanted all of it to be over. I wanted to fall asleep again and dream about Killer Wasp. Yeah, I figured any nightmare would be better than my reality. And then it was over. My mother fell asleep and let me go. I stood and walked into the kitchen. I was way hungry, but my cousins had eaten most of our food. So all I had for dinner was saltine crackers and water. Like I was in jail. Man. 2 days later, we buried my sister in the Catholic graveyard down near the powwow ground. I barely remember the wake. I barely remember the funeral service. I barely remember the burial. I was in this weird fog. No, it was more like I was in this small room, the smallest room in the world. I could reach out and touch the walls, which were made out of greasy glass. I could see shadows, but I couldn't see details, you know? And I was cold, just freezing. Like there was a snowstorm blowing inside of my chest. But all that fog and greasy glass and snow disappeared when they lowered my sister's coffin into the grave. And let me tell you, it had taken them forever to dig that grave in the frozen ground. As the coffin settled into the dirt, it made this noise, almost like a breath, you know? Like a sigh. Like the coffin was settling down for a long, long nap, for a forever nap. That was it. I had to get out of there. I turned and ran out of the graveyard and into the woods across the road. I planned on running deep into the woods, so deep that I'd never be found. But guess what? I ran full speed into Rowdy and sent us both sprawling. Yep, Rowdy had been hiding in the woods while he watched the burial. Wow. Rowdy sat up. I sat up too. We sat there together. Rowdy was crying. His face was shiny with tears. Rowdy, I said, you're crying. I ain't crying, he said, you're crying. I touched my face. It was dry. No tears yet. I can't remember how to cry, I said. That made Rowdy sort of choke. He gasped a little, and more tears rolled down his face. You're crying, I said. No, I'm not. It's okay. I miss my sister too. I love her. I said I'm not crying. It's okay. I reached out and touched Rowdy's shoulder. Big mistake. He punched me. Well, he almost punched me. He threw a punch, but he missed. Rowdy missed a punch. His fist went sailing over my head. Wow, I said, you missed. I missed on purpose. No, you didn't. You missed because your eyes are filled with tears. That made me laugh. Yep, I started laughing like a crazy man again. I rolled around on the cold, frozen ground and laughed and laughed and laughed. I didn't want to laugh. I wanted to stop laughing. I wanted to grab Rowdy and hang on to him. But he was my best friend, and I needed him. And I couldn't stop laughing. I looked at Rowdy, and he was crying hard now. I thought I was laughing at him. He thought I was laughing at him. Normally, Rowdy would have absolutely murdered anybody who dared to laugh at him, but this was not a normal day. It's all your fault, he said. What's my fault, I asked. Your sister is dead because you left us. You killed her. That made me stop laughing. I suddenly felt like I might never laugh again. Rowdy was right. I had killed my sister. Well, I didn't kill her, but she only got married so quickly and left the res because I had left the res first. She was only living in Montana in a cheap trailer house because I had gone to school in Reardon. She had burned to death because I had decided that I wanted to spend my life with white people. It was all my fault. I hate you, Rowdy screamed. I hate you, I hate you. And then he jumped up and ran away. Rowdy ran. He'd never run away from anything or anybody, but now he was running. I watched him disappear into the woods. I wondered if I'd ever see him again. The next morning I went to school. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to sit at home all day and talk to a million cousins. I knew my mother would be cooking food for everybody and that my father would be hiding out in his bedroom again. I knew everybody would tell stories about Mary, and the whole time I'd be thinking, yeah, but have you ever heard the story about how I killed my sister when I left the res? And the whole time, everybody would be drinking booze and getting drunk and stupid and sad and mean. Yeah, doesn't that make sense? How do we honor the drunken death of a young married couple? Hey, let's get drunk. Okay, listen, I'm not a cruel bleep, okay? I know that people were very sad. I knew that my sister's death made everybody remember all the deaths in their life. I know that death is never added to death, it multiplies. But still, I couldn't stay and watch all those people get drunk. I couldn't do it. If you'd given me a room full of sober Indians crying and laughing and telling stories about my sister, then I would have gladly stayed and joined them in the ceremony. But everybody was drunk. Everybody was unhappy, and they were drunk and unhappy in the same exact way. So I fled my house and went to school. I walked through the snow for a few miles until a white BIA worker picked me up and delivered me to the front door. I walked inside, into the crowded hallways, and all sorts of boys and girls and teachers came up and hugged me and slapped my shoulder and gave me little punches on the belly. They were worried for me. They wanted to help me with my pain. I was important to them. I mattered. Wow. All these white kids and teachers who were so suspicious of me when I first arrived had learned to care about me. Maybe some of them even love me, and I'd be so suspicious of them. And now I care about a lot of them, and loved a few of them. Penelope came up to me last. She was weeping. Snot ran down her face, and it was still sort of sexy. "I'm so sorry about your sister," she said. I didn't know what to say to her. What do you say to people when they ask you how it feels to lose everything, when every planet in your solar system has exploded?